Well, the ANC's National Working Committee is scheduled to give an update on the electricity crisis today. And this is after President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as other ANC officials, spent the weekend in KwaZulu-Natal, particularly in Chatsworth. And that's where Ramaphosa said the government is working diligently to guarantee power outages, of course, to become a thing of the past. But to unpack this, I'm now joined by political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa this morning, just to give us, of course, his perception, or rather, on what occurred out in KwaZulu-Natal. Lukhanyo, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your time. So let's reflect on this meeting by the ANC out in KwaZulu-Natal. We know on the agenda of key priority was the energy crisis. Anything stood out for you that we haven't heard before from the ruling party in terms of how exactly they plan to solve our energy crisis?
Good morning, Tumelo. Thank you for inviting me. I think before we start off, I just want to express solidarity and support to the students of CPUT who are dealing with very serious crisis of leadership in that institution and serious concerns with regards to their well-being there. Just wish them strength and that they're able to get those matters resolved. So the ANC's visit to the KZN province is in line with sort of a consolidation phase that the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, says they are undergoing in preparation for the 2024 general elections, which are going to be a make or break election for the ANC. So what they went to go do in KZN is to understand the state of that province and their branches. Remember that province went to a very divisive provincial conference last year, and there seems to be some hangover from that provincial conference with regards to some of the structures there that are still rebelling against the provincial leadership that emerged successfully from that elective conference last year. So the ANC is there to either decide what to do with the provincial executive committee, whether to disband it or to give it its support. And I think they're going to lend it its support because it would not be wise for an ANC to disband that province with less than a year to national elections next year, because that province delivers a lot of votes and support to the ANC, and I don't think they would want to rock the boat too much at this juncture. So that's what they went there to do. The other issues of responding to the US allegations or responding to the power crisis that we have in the country were, by the way, issues, but they were not the key concern for why the ANC went to KZN this weekend.
And I suppose, I mean, with regards to the energy crisis, as my first question alluded to, the president speaking to how they're working diligently with the Minister of Electricity, how they've entrusted him to, of course, come up with solutions. But it seems, you know, the more we talk about the energy crisis, the more we hear from government, it seems the very same old problems that the country knows, the very same old solutions that have been promised. So again, do you think anything stood out for you, or is it the same old rhetoric around we're working around the clock and the minister is doing all he can to resolve this crisis?
Tumelo, you could hear from the very general terms with which the president addressed the energy crisis that we're facing, even the solutions that now there's going to be even more focus on generation, there's going to be even more focus on maintenance, and even more focus on moving with urgency to implement some of the solutions that he had proposed in July when he announced the recovery plan, the energy recovery plan. So there's nothing new that really stood out there. There are no new ideas, there are no new solutions. The Minister of Electricity was touted on the 9th of February at the President's State of the Nation address. To this day, that minister has no constitutional powers, has no executive powers, so they really are functioning in limbo themselves in that particular office because they have no real powers to do anything or to resolve the energy crisis. So much of the same, no new ideas. The crisis that we are facing will not be resolved by any stretch of the imagination anytime soon, because really there are no urgent solutions that are being implemented, and that which has been proposed hasn't worked thus far, and therefore we can expect to have a very dark winter period ahead of us.
Well, I suppose in essence, Lukhanyo, we shouldn't expect much from that briefing today regarding some of those resolutions taken in terms of dealing with the energy crisis. But I want to touch on again the issue mentioned with the ANC KZN leadership. I mean, do you think some of the issues we're seeing manifesting now actually were mushrooming after the ANC's elective conference last year? We understand that some of the ANC comrades from the KwaZulu-Natal region were discouraged from voting for, amongst others, the likes of Sihe, Zigalala, Dumiseni Ntuli, etc. Do you think the destabilization we're seeing right now emanates from last year, December?
Yes, Melo, definitely there are those hangovers that you find in KZN, but not only in KZN, in the Northwest as well. They're dealing with their own challenges there, expelling some members, and even in the firing line is a deputy minister in the presidency that had a disciplinary hearing yesterday. The same thing is happening in Limpopo as well. So the ANC has a lot of hangover with the number of elective conferences that happened last year. And KZN is another particularly strange animal in the fact that one of the casualties of the elective conference last year is Sihle Zigalala, who had to give up his seat as a premier last year prematurely. I think he was there for less than two years, if I recall properly. So he's one of the casualties of that. Dumiseni Ntuli that you mentioned as well, who was a front runner for the position of Secretary General of the ANC, having received the highest nominations from the branches leading up to that elective conference. But there were murmurs and rumors that on the ground he was decampaigned by the biggest province in the ANC, which happens to be his home province of KZN. So you can see those differences were not resolved by the time that they went to UNASREC, and they seem to not be resolved even now. And Dumiseni Ntuli is now a powerful figure within the NEC of the ANC, serving at Luthuli House. So those challenges do exist, but whether or not the NWC has the political appetite to dissolve its biggest province so close to a general election, I don't think they have that appetite. I think they're going to try and play and force the two warring factions to play nice with each other for the sake of the 2024 general elections. Maybe after that they can take more stringent actions, such as dissolving that province, but leading up to that 2024 general election, I don't see them disbanding the PEC of KZN at all.
You're absolutely right there, Lukhanyo. I think I have to agree with you that even though there may not be an appetite to disband, but a lot of work lies ahead for them. Just judging by the performance of their by-elections within the government, especially leading up to the general elections next year, there's a lot of work on the ground that the ANC has to do, especially with making sure that the PEC receives the support they need, but also those factions that you're talking about. There's some commonality and common ground leading up to elections. So I appreciate your voice in this. Lukhanyo Vangqa, political analyst, joining me this morning to take this conversation forward regarding the ANC's meeting out in KwaZulu-Natal.